An MSNBC panel recently discussed Bernie Sanders' advice to progressives. The Vermont Senator has been traveling the country with Alexandria Ocasio Cortez on his Stop Oligarchy tour and was basically asked about the future of the progressive movement. What exactly did it look like? Now, his answer was that, hey, look, run for office, and that's been his standard message for a very, very long time. Run for office, get involved in politics. But this time, there's been a change. He says if you have to run outside the Democratic Party in order to win, then you should do it. Now, of course, not everybody is happy about that message. And on this MSNBC segment, they had Dean Withers. Dean Withers is a young Gen Z influencer for the Democratic Party, and he had this to say about Bernie's advice.
I'd say right now, I probably wouldn't agree with Bernie. My focus right now is I just like to see a lot of reform within the Democrat Party because I find that to be the fastest way to coalesce a majority of the country behind beliefs that are in opposition to Trump. But I also do want to see the Democratic Party succeed and actually do good by their constituents and do good by the world, which requires a lot of reform in my eyes. But I think, saying that right now we don't need to all coalesce into one group and we should start splitting off and kind of diverting our interests into independent candidates, etc. It just might not be the right time. I say that we all get together with a strong anti-Trump sentiment and a strong stand for human rights. We reform the Democrat Party where needed, and it is in a lot of places. We get Trump out of office. We set MAGA aside. And then I think there is a lot of room for a conversation to start about, maybe a third party, the independents, or ranked base voting. But right now, it's just important to get MAGA out of the way.
Okay, so look, Dean is relatively young. I think that's fairly obvious. And so, look, I'm going to both agree and disagree with him. Okay, so let me break it down. So he says, well, okay, the Democratic Party, it needs reform, right? Do they need reform? Oh, massively. Okay, yes, it does. The Democratic Party is currently at 29% approval rating. Saying that it needs reform is a bit mild. Okay, it's a bit mild. Now, he also says, look, splitting things up and going to multiple different parties, whatever, is a bad idea. We all need to be joining against Donald Trump. Now, I do agree to a point that, yes, we should be focused fire on Donald Trump. But the only problem is the Democratic Party does not agree with you. Okay? You got the Chuck Schumers and the John Fettermans, Alyssa Slotkin. They're all helping Donald Trump pass things like the CR, giving up any and all of their leverage. And then Hakeem Jeffries is like, what can we do? Oh, there's nothing we can do. They've got everything. Yeah, that's because you're handing over all of your power, all of your leverage. And he also said, and this is important too, we got to be on the side of human rights and show them a strong human rights message. The Democratic Party hasn't really been very good with human rights either. Okay, they're throwing trans people under the bus. And then, of course, the biggest example here is the genocide in Gaza, okay, where their message was, Israel's 100% correct, and if you disagree with them, you are Hamas. Well, wait, whoa. So I'm sorry, but what Dean is saying, it hasn't happened and will likely not happen unless there is major changes. And he's like, yes, it does need change. The Democratic Party needs a lot of reform. Yes, a great deal. Okay, so like I said, Dean is a young guy, so maybe he's not quite aware of what's going on. That Bernie Sanders and his allies have actually tried that approach already to try to run inside the Democratic Party to push it to the left. And they've been trying to reform the party since at least 2016, if not longer. And all of that work has amounted to basically nothing. Progressives are still numero uno like target number one, okay, on the list of what the Democratic Party is fighting against. We must fight the progressives. They fight the progressives far stronger, far more effectively than they're fighting against the right wing right now. That's it. That's it. And so maybe Dean's not aware of that because he is young. Okay. And so that leadership, though, absolutely loves to keep punching left. And they ought to stop doing that. They should actually start to embrace the left. Now, that said, Cameron Kasky was also on this panel, and he provided a bit of a pushback to this and explains why the Democrats are not taking the obvious route of being more economically populist.
AOC and Bernie's policies are extremely popular, and that is something that a lot of people in the Democratic Party hate. They do not like how popular Medicare for All is. They do not like how popular AOC...
Why do you think that is?
Because AOC and Bernie, they're...
No, why do the people not like it? Why do other Democrats not like those policies?
Policies like that focus on what actually brings people together. The reason folks like AOC and Bernie can resonate with voters who would have otherwise voted for Republicans, it's because they are calling out the oligarchy, and a lot of Democrats don't want to call out the oligarchy because that's where they get a lot of their money. A lot of Democrats will not talk about the billionaires. They will not talk about how your problems are coming from these people who hoard money at the expense of other human beings' well-being, because that's their donors. But Bernie and AOC, the reason they're getting record numbers of people to turn out for them is because they're saying what everybody's thinking, which is the oligarchs and the billionaires are in power right now, and we won't stand up for that. That's why people who would have otherwise voted for Republicans would vote for AOC and Bernie. That's why people are coming together. It's because finally people in the Democratic Party are pointing at the real issue, which is the billionaires.
And there it is. Yes, point out the corruption, point out the billionaires, the lobbying, the donors. See, he gets it, okay? He's getting it. He's getting it. So now that's the difference, though, right? You've got these two wings of the Democratic Party. Dean is very establishment liberal, okay? Saying, oh, no, the real thing is we gotta unify and be super anti-Trump, which we've already done. Whereas Cameron is like, yo, it's the billionaires. Why don't we actually support popular economic policy? The reason, of course, that we're not as a party is because we got the donors that are coming in and saying you can't do that. No, because that's going to hurt our profits. He's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So if you're wondering, like, yes, Cameron Kasky, nailing it. Nailing it. But now, that said, the last video here is Molly Jong-Fast, who also says something really interesting.
This is the populist wing of the party, right? The people who are talking about healthcare and talking about a government that works for everyone, who is rich or poor, that you don't go bankrupt if you get sick. These are the things that people want, the voters want. And I think what some of the Democrats in leadership failed to see is that they kind of got their middle of the road candidate. They got sort of what they wanted, the sort of corporate-y, and like the base may not be satisfied with that. And the idea that they could get Republicans, we now know those people are not going to vote for Democrats. Yeah. Right? There's no Liz Cheney Democrat.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my favorite part. All right. Where she points out, hey man, the establishment, you got what you wanted. You didn't even have a primary, okay? There was no primary. And yes, I remember saying, and I'm going to be like super clear about that. I was saying, well, yeah, at this point in the race, because it was like August when Biden stepped down, I was like, well, at this point in the race, kind of makes sense to have Kamala Harris, even though it would be nice for there to be a primary. I get it with the whole war chest and all that, and you need everything to fight Donald Trump. Okay, so yes, I admit that I was wrong on that, right? There should have been a primary. It should have been robust, and it should have happened far sooner because Joe Biden should not have run for re-election. Okay? So, but anyway, yes, they got the candidate they wanted against Donald Trump. The establishment did. She went super centrist and tried, traveled the country with Liz Cheney. And as, Molly points out, there are no Liz Cheney Democrats. They just don't exist. They're a media fabrication. That's it. And look, this goes back to how the Democratic Party has absolutely failed. Remember, Chuck Schumer had said, for every blue-collar worker we lose in Pennsylvania, we're going to pick up a Republican voter in the suburbs, right? For every two, okay? So we're going to pick up Republican voters in the suburbs. So don't worry about it. Don't appeal to working-class people. No, the Republicans will come save us. Except that, no, it never happens. Traveling with Liz Cheney did not help. Talking about how lethal the military is did not work. How she carries a Glock, okay, and she's going to come after crime. None of that worked. None of that worked. Foregoing traveling around with Sean Fain, okay, union leader, or somebody like Bernie Sanders or AOC, who would have done that, they didn't. That campaign even muzzled Tim Walz. And so, yes, they got that centrist candidate that they were all itching for, that they said was going to win because Republicans will come and save us. And that didn't happen. Republicans were like, no, we're not going to save you. We're going to burn the country down. Hell yeah. Yeah, everybody get the marshmallows. We're burning it right down. Those are the people that you expected to come in and vote for Democrats. No. How do you beat Trump then? By saying, we're going to get you health care. We're going to tax the rich. We're going to make it so that you can afford groceries. We're going to make it so you can afford child care. That's how you beat Trump. You give people a reason to turn out. And not only that, but you listen to these communities. You defend the trans community. You defend, innocent Palestinians that are getting killed and say, I am going to work tirelessly to actually do a real peace between the two. But the violence has got to stop now. And once I get into office, I am going to stop that violence. We're going to stop giving Israel money and bombs. We're going to stop it until there's a peace. But she couldn't be strong about that. She couldn't be strong about anything. She couldn't distance herself from Joe Biden. That was a failure. Look, Dean wants to continue to do the same failed strategy that Democrats have been doing since they encountered Donald Trump, riding off that golden escalator. Okay? And I think that's a huge mistake. Look, I want this guy to come around. I think he's a smart kid. I've seen him argue with the chuds on his show. All right? And so I have no hate for him, all due respect. But I think his strategy is just a disaster. If now is not the time, then when will it ever be the time? When will it ever be? When the party refuses to change, even after getting blown out and sinking to 29% approval rating, it either has to adapt or die and make way for a new party. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.